So good afternoon. Welcome to the Diversity Roundtable. My name is Pamela Xaba. I am your host for today. So this is really a platform where we bring bold, unfiltered conversations that challenge the leadership and inclusion game in Africa and beyond. So thank you so much for being with us today. So the topic is the leadership game with Dr. Pat Mazibuko. So now, what do we mean when we say the leadership game? So briefly, it's really not about titles, it's not about positions, it's really about strategy, influence, adaptability, and vision. It is really about knowing when to make the tough calls, when to listen, and when to play to win, most importantly. And it's also about knowing the costs and the pitfalls and the impact on people, on teams and entire organizations. And today I'm honored to be joined by none other than Dr. Pat Mazibuko, who is a leader, a strategist, a thinker whose voice has shaped many conversations around leadership and transformation in South Africa and the continent at large. Dr. Pat, welcome.
Thank you so much, and a very good afternoon, colleagues, wherever you are.
Thank you, thank you. We are really blessed and we are so grateful to have you today. So before we then take a deep dive into the discussion, so let me just introduce you briefly. So Dr. Pat is a seasoned leadership strategist, is an academic, is a mentor who has worked extensively with organizations navigating complexity and change. He has dedicated his work to exploring the dynamics of leadership, what makes it work, what breaks it down, and how leaders can evolve to meet the demands of today's fast-changing world. Dr. Pat, maybe briefly just give us your light-hearted intro, just a bit of background about who you are, in case I left something out that maybe is of a personal nature that you are comfortable to share with us, just to break the ice, and then we'll kickstart the discussion.
Thank you so much, Pam, and again, a very good afternoon to my learned colleagues and Pat Mazibuko. You've covered pretty much all, but maybe a little bit. I'm a father and I'm a husband. I love serving God. It's one of the things that I'm not shy to say. I am very passionate about leadership. I believe with leadership, you can basically turn a lot of things around, but most importantly, I tell people that I am a permanent leadership student. And I think I will do that as long as I live, up until my very last breath on this world. And I like learning, and I believe that if you put yourself on a trajectory of learning every day, you become a different person. But I'm also a published author. I've published about 6 books to date, and there's one that's coming soon in February. And I like listening and be taught by other people. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pat. 6 books. I can't really wait to get my hands on those books and really dive into the knowledge that you pour out into the world. So it's really exciting stuff indeed. So let's really then set the scene with for today's discussion. Let's go into the center of the theme, which is the leadership game. You know, so when we call leadership a game, Dr. Pat, what do we really mean?
When we call it a leadership game, it simply means just the game of leadership. You know, I often tell people that the game of leadership is easy and yet complex. It's a game that cannot be played by anybody else. And I always say that everybody's invited, but not everybody has got the capability and the ability to play. So it separates men from the boys. A number of times we've put people in position, we've called them leaders. They're just not leaders. They're fulfilling a different function, not really playing a leadership game. It is a little bit of a strategic view and looking outward rather than inward. And as a result, it requires you to think out of the box.
Sure. What is this box? So I'm just always saying, think outside of the box, right? So I'm just thinking, really, it's like a living, breathing chessboard. Leaders need to think ahead. Is that what we mean when we say thinking outside of the box? Do they really need to also anticipate challenges? They also need to build alliances because no man or woman is an island, and also to make the moves that will shape the future, right? But really, in any game, right, Dr. Pett, there are rules. And there are also players as much as there are rules. And not everyone is destined to be a leader, like you rightfully said. But, we need to make sure that people, when they enter the leadership game, they are then equipped to play, right? So in that context, what makes or breaks a leader then in the game? Can you unpack this for us?
Before getting to what makes or breaks a leader in the leadership game, I believe personally in the unconventional leadership. And that is what I mean when I say think out of the box. I believe that yesterday's problem do not require, yesterday's problems are yesterday's problem. If you've got problems today and we were successful in dealing with them yesterday and with a particular modus operandi, there is absolutely no guarantee that when you apply that modus operandi today, you're going to be successful. So what I also mean is that I bring a lot of unconventional leadership. And a lot of people believe in conventional leadership. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I'm talking about myself. The fact that I advocate for unconventional leadership, which is thinking out of the box. An example would be a lot of people want and prefer to follow traditional ways of leadership, defined. And they know these next steps. I get very excited when I do things that do not follow necessarily the traditional way of doing things. An example, I normally like pushing an envelope. But when you push an envelope, you really need to understand the profile of people that you're working with. Sometimes I like and I enjoy a flatter structure because you can be able to touch the hearts and minds of people. But when you apply an unconventional leadership style or approach, you've got to understand the kind of people that you're working with. And I normally say that as you come down to the lower ranks, maybe pull away from that unconventional leadership approach because you may confuse people. But when you get closer to middle management level and upwards, that's when you can be able to push the envelope and stretch people a little bit because you basically have to get to a point where you say you are empowered. And all I need you to do is to understand the mandate and understand the goals, and then say what can be done and step back and see people amaze you. And I always have a challenge, and Pam and my colleagues, when you hire bright people and then you tell them what to do step by step. To me, that is one of the barriers that you were talking about. When you bring people that are bright, you bring in bright boys and bright girls, and you tell them step by step what you need to do. That's when you kill their innovation. That's when you kill their passion.
Sure. And it is so true, right? It really borders on micromanagement. But before we get into micromanagement and other terms like that, maybe just can you answer this question for us in detail, Dr. Pett? Now, knowing what we know and what we have unpacked for us up to this point. So what really then makes or breaks a leader in this game?
What really makes or break a leader in this game? One is lack of self-confidence. When you as a leader don't know yourself, how on earth should we expect you to be able to lead? When your leader does not have confidence in yourself, how on earth should we then expect you to lead? When your leader cannot be able to tell a story that is captivating to those that you lead, such that they can follow you, they can charge up and run with it, then how on earth can we expect you to lead? But when you're a leader and you basically have a lot of, you've got a lot of inferiority complex, where you are threatened by the bright girls and bright boys that surround you, and it basically collapses your world. And even if you don't say it, people can feel it, because sometimes it's not what you say, it's what you do. And people are always able to feel it. They connect with you. And if you exhibit negative energy, basically then starts going on to them. And these are the things that can really break, or the deal breakers, amongst other things, for leadership in this space.
So it really sounds like one has to do a lot of work when it comes to self-awareness and introspection to be successful in this game, right? Because as we always say, that if you can't lead yourself, how do you then expect to lead others, right? And there are so many traps that leaders, because it's not a linear journey, and it's not, the journey is not mapped out clearly for everyone. So there are different dynamics and different factors, right? And so when leaders then fall into these traps, the ripple effect is really, really a massive loss of trust, disengagement, increased turnover, sometimes even the reputation of the organization itself. Right. So what do you have to say about that, Dr. Pat? Just really about leaders overcoming this, some of these traps in the game, and how do they navigate their way through it?
Thank you so much for a good question. I've got to step back and tell you that when you're a leader, you also need to have some other people that you connect with that lead you. And those people come in the form of a mentor and in the form of a coach. And then you also need to have some confidence, people that you can go to them and talk about what if so, then what, because those kind of people, they help you. And I've never seen a successful leader that does not have those kind of people that they can go to and just be themselves and say, look, I've got the following challenge and I'm thinking about this. And they ask you these nice and painful questions that force you to think like this. And when you come back and try and conceptualize that, you then conceptualize that with a lot of confidence, and you are able to take that to the people that you lead. But another thing that you need to think about is that as a leader and dealing with some dynamic issues as we deal with them today, it basically forces you that you take your time and think things through.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that a number of leaders, they shoot from the hip. And shooting from the hip, at the end of the day, the unintended consequences is that it's you as a leader that sit with an egg on the face. So as a leader, sometimes in the leadership game, there are times when you need to slow down. Push yourself to a point where you need to slow down. Reflect, and reflect. And be able to basically critique yourself. But I also want to, maybe as I try, because I'm mindful of time, but I want us to be able to talk about this. I am reminded by one of the African ladies, I think it's Salif somebody, a lady, she said, quote unquote, Africa is not poor, it is poorly led. So the big question is, what do we define as poor leadership? Poor leadership is all about short-sightedness, in my view. When people at a leadership level, they think about themselves, not think about the bigger game and the bigger benefits. And these are some of the things that we basically find. And also the fact that we've actually put people in leadership positions that they are not qualified to do. Maybe let me just give you a bigger picture about this. I've often said we normally have the right people in the past, sometimes we don't have the right people in the past. And suppose that we've got the right people in the past, but what also challenges us is that we have the wrong people sitting in the wrong seats. So it's not only about having the right people in the past, it's about having the right people sitting at the right seats. And these are some of the challenges that we normally have from a leadership point of view.
Sure, it's about the wrong people sitting at the right seats. So which really takes me into the next segment, Dr. Pat, because everything that we have spoken about, it really prompts me to want to talk about really what are the costs then of playing the game. So maybe let's unpack that. Let's dig into what are the costs of playing the game, because leadership doesn't come cheap, right? There's organizational costs, financial losses, high attrition, disengagement, but there's also the personal cost for leaders themselves: stress, burnout, loneliness. As they say, it's lonely at the top. Can we talk about those costs?
The personal cost from a leadership point of view, as you say, is leadership is lonely.
Mm.
It's really, really lonely. But some of the things that people go through as personal costs, it can translate into their health, and you need to understand that part. But because as a leader, some of the leaders fail to create psychological safety, and it then gets back to them, and then it affects them psychologically and spiritually and physically. So these are some of the things that from a personal point of view we do. And then what other people, when they suffer this personal cost, they start shutting off. When you shut off, ultimately you isolate yourself as a leader. And then when you isolate yourself as a leader, and it boils down to one thing, that you're going it alone. When you start going it alone, you disconnect with the people that work with you, and also with your colleagues and those that you report to. And I always say, there are always three things, or two things that we talk about when it comes to a personal cost of leadership. It's about your horizontal stakeholders, because your horizontal stakeholders will always pick up when there's a disconnect, when you start feeling those personal costs. But also your vertical stakeholders, which is probably your, and also the stakeholders above your boss and so on. And these are the things, and most people, when they go through this, they start blaming other people. They don't accept that it's about pull yourself out of the bench, and you go and sit right there on top and become one of the spectators. And it's amazing what you will see when you're there, as opposed to when you're sitting right there by the line and on the bench.
Yeah, so you make me think quite a lot, Dr. Pat. I'm just thinking about my own journey as well, and I'm sure also people in our audience, they're finding your insights quite really enriching indeed, and really it's thought-provoking, because we now have to think about our own personal spaces and what has led us to this point. So, and I'm also excited because we'll have a wider reach in terms of the people that will listen to this recording. Dr. Pat, we've got a buzzing YouTube channel where we will upload this recording and we promote it to South Africa as a whole, to other African countries in the continent as well. So really, your rich insights are really, really, really valuable. Yeah. So, and
maybe, Pam, if I could just interject.
Yes.
Let's also try and exhaust the other part.
Yeah.
The other part is the fact that if this personal or this cost that you're talking about, they start affecting those that you lead. When those that you lead are affected, and a number of times when you get to face the pains that you're talking about, the people that you work with feel it. And sometimes people take out their stress on them, and it brings about burnout. Because a number of times, what we've observed from a leadership point of view is that when people reach that part of their life, they start focusing on one or two individuals, and they overload them because they think these are the two people that hear me, that I feel comfortable with. But what you don't realize is that you overload them. But these people sometimes, because they don't want to let go of your faith in them, they stress themselves, and ultimately they find themselves at the same point where you are at. And it becomes a ripple effect. But somewhere along the line, you start being toxic by default to those that are around you. And as a leader, when you exhibit toxic behaviors, it comes out on those that you lead. And the entire environment becomes toxic. And there is nothing as painful as an employee to be subjected to a toxic leader and a toxic environment. And I often say to people, rather exit and basically say, I must protect myself rather than go through this. But the other unintended consequences of such is that your top flyers are the ones to exit first. Because those ones, they will never tolerate your nuisance. They will basically raise their hands and they'll get out. And you'll be left with the people that you can't do anything about in the organization. So the cost of that is quite huge to the organization. But maybe the last one that we don't talk about, because your employees and your colleagues are basically affected. It affects your customers. And if you are in a service or in a product kind of environment, you then suffer what I call a huge customer chain. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Pet. So if I can just summarize this last bit that you've said now. So in my mind, I'm going to frame it like, what it means is that, so leadership is not just about strategy and results only. So it's also about sustainability, both for the leader and the people that they lead. So I hope I'm correct in summing it up in this statement that in the leadership game, we need to consider sustainability for the individuals that are involved, both the leader and the people that are being led, right? So we have
yes,
spoken
Pam, you've
about
said
the
it very
costs.
well. Maybe let me just comment to that sentence. You've said it very well, but it must always be a conscious decision of a leader to say it's about the environment, it's about people, it's about customers. If it does not become a conscious decision, that person is most likely to miss the route.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Penn. So we've spoken about the costs, right? So now let's really talk now about, so how do we win? So what are the winning strategies, right? So if leadership is indeed a game, right? So let's ask, how do you win? How do you win, Dr. Pett?
Let me tell you this, in answering your question, there is not a single formula of how do you win. But there are a couple of elements that you need to understand. First and foremost, you need to be very clear of your mandate. A number of times you've seen leaders that are acting outside their mandate, or probably they've got no clue what is their mandate. That's one. Number two, be very clear of your objectives, okay? And also be able to connect your dots, because your objectives need to align to the broader objectives of the organization. You need to be very clear and be mindful how your objectives affect the other objectives and ultimately the organizational objectives and so on. But how do you win? It's also about your workbench. If you are a leader, you want to win, you need to ensure that you've got a very healthy workbench. And I'm using the language from a sporting point of view to say, if your workbench and you are in a sports is not healthy and your results are not going to be healthy. But another thing of how do you win, it's also about trust and respect. Remember that trust is a currency. It is a very expensive currency. When those that you work with can feel that currency is depreciating, guaranteed you're not going to win. You are going to be one of the losers. You are going to be one of those that will remain on the scoreboard as having and lost. But trust is important. But, as I say, and I talk about the strength of your workbench, it's about making sure that and I call them tier one and tier two. Your strength, your workbench, tier one has got to be strong, but make sure that there is a succession plan such that you are able to provide results and continuously. Part of winning, so that I avoid myself talking too much, is about creating a consistent performance. A lot of people, you find that they come in, they move things right like this, and then everybody says, wow. But the following years, they are unable to produce even 40% of what they produced last year. So for me, part of the winning formula is making sure that you can galvanize everybody else such that you can give consistent performance and improve on that one and make sure that everybody knows that this is how we got it. And normally, where I've been working, because I'm very close to people, I would go to people and say, hey, well done. How did you make it happen? And just see if I can pick up some golden thread in that. And then when people can tell me, how did they make it happen? I lose some sleep at night. But if I could pick it up and I can see a golden thread and I can see that they know, then I'm excited.
No, thank you so much, Dr. Pett, because most often we think that winning is just only about beating your competitors. But I think based on what you are saying, that it's also about building organizations and communities that thrive, right? And it's also really also about creating spaces where people feel seen, they feel heard, and they're also motivated to contribute by how actually they are being led as well, right? So thank you so much for really unpacking in terms of how do we win in the leadership game, right? And also on this platform, the Diversity Roundtable, we often emphasize that leadership is also not neutral, right? It either multiplies impact or magnifies dysfunction. Can you comment on that statement, Dr. Pat?
Yeah, leadership has never been neutral.
Mm.
If you think that leadership is neutral, then you've missed it. And it's important to understand that by design, leadership can't be neutral. You need to take a particular position. But when you take that particular position, you need yourself first to be convinced. And sometimes what basically breaks what we're talking about is when a leader, and I'm going to talk about, because I've worked for 3 organizations today, and I had a boss that used to tell me, you know, like, Pat, I'm telling you to do this as your boss. Mm. And I never understood why my boss had to tell me that he's instructing me because he's a boss. And I'm sure a lot of you have been through that. And so you can see how we tend to basically miss it. Then the other part of your question, so that I don't miss it,
is that leadership is not neutral. It either multiplies impact or it magnifies dysfunction.
Yes. Let me talk about this. Talking about the unconventional approach. And I've always said to people, you can influence those that work with you, whether this way or that way, in a number of ways. Or you can basically find yourself isolating yourself, including your team. And when you isolate yourself in a team, it's like you can't have a division in a bigger organization doing so well, and then the other part of the organization is functional. So you can see that there's a total disconnect. But you find that some other people are so passionate about what they do, they leave everybody else behind. And ultimately, they're not going to get there because, like you say, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, take other people with you. And that is where that small difference comes in.
Yep. So it's really about how do we bring others along. Yes. So, and we also then just really think about our own experiences and how do we take some of the lessons from our journey that will carry us forward and have a wider and a bigger impact in society and also in the context of the leadership game, right? And together with some partners of mine and some close friends, we then came together and because we're always talking about what is it that we can do to really make an impact and make sure that it's scalable. So we then sat together and started talking about it. We came up with an initiative called Inspired Growth, right? Where we thought if we can invest in leadership development and we can create spaces for dialogue and equip leaders with the tools to navigate this complexity that we're talking about, but navigate it with courage, navigate it with wisdom, navigate it with inclusion, right? So, and then I called on you because also I always say to Mary, who's also in our call, one of our co-founders of Inspired Growth, that, LinkedIn is such a powerful platform because I think 90% of people that I know that I do work with, I met them through LinkedIn. And also just to tell our viewers and our audience here in the call is that I also met you, Dr. Pat, on LinkedIn and not so long ago. I think it's like less than 2 weeks ago. And because you posted something so impactful and it really caught my eye and it got me thinking, and what you really posted, and that post stuck with me, and it actually prompted me to take action and reach out to you. And I was so afraid that, what if he doesn't respond? What if he thinks I'm being forward? But really, the quote, it went along the lines of, you miss every chance that you take, so rejection is painful, but what is more painful is to not take action because you miss those chances that you do not take action on. So which then prompted me to reach out to you, and here we are today. So back to inspired growth. Can you talk to us about inspired growth, and just elaborate, why you decided to get involved, just to also enlighten our audience here today and for the wider audience that will be listening to this recording?
Thank you so much, Pam. Look, I was quite taken by their vision and mission. And I could align myself with their vision and mission. And one of the things that they talk about is leadership excellence. And leadership excellence is very close to my heart, like I told you, but also the fact that they're addressing some hardcore issues of our communities. I think what I saw when I look at their mission and vision is that they're stepping back and saying, what else can be done? And I watch as I took time to read your mission and vision, to say a lot of people tend to focus on one thing. I don't say it's wrong, but if you can step back and say, what are the things that are deal breakers that when we focus on would have a positive impact to the bigger society? And I saw those things within the vision and the mission of inspired growth. And I said to myself, look, I am very passionate about leadership. I'm very passionate about solving the issues that we have got in the country. One of the things, Pam and my colleagues, that we do when we go to school, we normally say that, look, when you go and do your masters and go and do your PhDs, they say, what is your contribution to the society? Yeah. Because that's what they push. And even here, there are a whole lot of societal issues that inspired growth is basically pushing to basically deal with. Let me give you one example. We've got a lot of people that are in key positions, but continuously they need some coaching, some mentoring, and we can do a lot more about that. But sometimes you may have the key fundamentals of the position, but you don't have the softer part. Because what really makes people break or make or break in their positions, sometimes it's not the lack of the key fundamentals, it is the lack of the softer part. And I think this is where inspired growth comes in. But secondly, there are certain issues that our society is not willing to talk about. And let me just talk about this and be very frank and be very, look, unemployment. And for those of you colleagues that are working right now, that are in corporates, government, and so on, you think you're doing a great job. And the fact is, you are doing a great job. But if you don't turn around and take a look at how unemployment is basically going up, before you know it, it's going to affect you. Unemployment right now has turned the country upside down, and you can see how it's affecting us as you drive along and when you are walking down when you're walking downtown and so on. So if you as a corporate colleague or government or anything else, you do not stand up and be accounted, one of these days you'll then say, what has happened in this country? And yet you could not stand out and be accounted at the right time. So I took a decision that I want to be one of those people that can contribute in turning around the socio-economic issues of this country.
Yep, thank you so much for articulating it so well, Dr. Pat, because if we have to think about the future of work and people and the impact on society at large, is that how do we step up in our different spaces, in our different organizations, and just really how do we also collaborate and bring also impactful voices like yourself and other voices also in our political spheres, in our private sector, in our public sector, to say, you know what, can we help ourselves and also help our young people so that the next generation maybe does not have to go through some of the challenges that we've had to go through. So thank you so much for unpacking that. So, but before I move on, I'll just like to take a bit of time.
Maybe also, if I could interject, there's another point that you guys talk about within the inspired growth fraternity. Yeah, it's a word that people use, and it's called entrepreneurship. Yeah. I like shaking the tree, but as I shake the tree in this platform, a lot of people in the past, say, 3 decades, have left the corporate world to go and run their own businesses.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you that is good, but maybe not that good, because we need to make a distinction between being able to do the job, which means we've got the skills and the tools to basically do this thing, and also as opposed to having the ability to run the job, because those are two things. So I have been thinking that within the community of Inspired Growth, one of my key focus areas would be around equipping people with the skills to be able to run the job, not to do the job, because those are two different things.
Can you just unpack it, the difference between being able to do the job and being able to run the job? So that is very clear. Just unpack it a bit for us. We still have time. We have like about 20 minutes. But we'll also open up some time towards the end to engage with the people that have joined us in the call, just to take some. I know that there are some comments in the chat as well, but just unpack that difference to do the job and to run the job.
Let me talk about the guys. I'm going to probably do it in three parts. I'm going to talk about the guys within the brick and mortar environment. The fact that you are an expert on brick and mortar environment, when you leave the environment where you've been working for Group 5, to say, I'm not going to go on my own. You know, what you don't realize is that once you are working for whatever that organization is, you had people supporting you at the back from a strategic leadership point of view. You were not worried about this other stuff. That's why you were successful in basically executing your job from a brick and mortar operations point of view. Now, when you go out there and you start creating a PEM incorporated construction, you are now also expected not only to do it, but to also do the part that you were not doing in the job. That is of providing leadership, making sure that all the softer parts are being fulfilled. And a number of those people, they don't fail on those hard core skills. They fail on the softer parts. You're now an employer. Remember, you are not an employer. You are an employee. You now have got to make sure that you do what you used to blame your boss to do. You used to say, my boss is unable to create a conducive environment. Now it's you that has got to create a conducive environment. You used to blame your boss to say, my boss is not creating a psychological safety. Now it's you that has got to do that. And you used to say, somebody's dealing with organized labor issues. Now when you are an employer yourself, those issues have got to be dealt with by yourself. The same thing when you probably decide I was a good engineer or so on. But this is what I'm talking about. That the difference is not about being unable to do the job, but it's about what other support that makes your business complete, or that will probably make sure that your entrepreneurial journey is a success. It's not only about understanding the core issues, but it's also understanding the softer part. But there are also what are called legal issues that you need to deal with. Remember, in your previous job as an HR specialist, there are other things that you didn't care anything or care less about. But now you are the big Mnumzan. You've got to make it. You are the one that makes it or breaks it. And a number of us are unable to do it. And I've seen a lot of people that have now come back into the mainstream to say, look, I thought I could run a business. No, you were not able to run a business. You were able to perform a certain function of the business. And one of the things that we want to do within the Inspired Growth fraternity is to equip people with the ability to do those things that will make sure that they become self-sufficient. And also, as I basically close on this issue, the thing is, when you go into business, there are other things that you need to be mindful of. In this day and age, you need to go and find ways of making sure there's enough money, and you need to understand the accounting practices that you were not even worried about because somebody was doing that, but also what makes your organization differ, because as I conclude on this issue, when you were working for company X, you were not worried about a unique selling position. But now that you're working for yourself, that unique thing that you probably have got to do yourself, or what separates you from the boss, from the rest, it's about you. So it's about your UIP is important.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for breaking it down for us really, really well, because it's like, do you really know how to run the business and all aspects of it? And that come with it? And do you have the skills to do so? Thank you so much, Dr. Pat. I'm just looking at our chat here. And there's a comment here that says, greetings, thanks for the eye-opening discussion. My concern is, how do you bring everybody on board in terms of leadership for the total organization to win if other departments are not pulling their weight, including their leaders? So can you help answer that comment in the chat, Dr. Pat? I'm not sure, there's no name, there's just the phone name that's, I'm not sure who posted it, but it's really, how do you make sure that, everyone wins and the other departments that are not pulling their weight, including their leaders, how do we navigate that dynamic?
Yeah, it's a very good question. You've got to understand that as a leader in an organization, you've got your function to fulfill, but there are also your colleagues that have got a function to fulfill. And collectively, you've got a bigger function to fulfill. So everybody's got to put their shoulder to it. But part of leadership game is your ability to influence. And that is one thing that is important. Sometimes, not sometimes, all the time as a leader, it's not about your ability to influence that report to you or your colleagues. It's also about your ability to influence other people within the value chain. Sometimes one of the ways to do it is to have one-on-ones. Like as an example, I used to work for a vertically integrated organization. And so for us to be told that we were a succeeding organization, it meant that the other part within that value chain had to come to the part. For you to be able to be successful, you need to go into them and start influencing them. But sometimes the ability to influence is a little bit skillful. Sometimes it requires you to be humble. You can't come to me and say, Dr. Pat, look, shape up or shape out. You've got to come to me and be able to create a picture that I'm going to see and create a compelling vision that I'm going to say, look, when you walk out of my office, I am willing to stand up and be counted. Sometimes it's about that ability to influence rather than going in there and just say, hey, you're not coming to the party. Because the moment you say that, people start stepping back and say, go out and do it. But the unintended consequences sometimes when you start moving too much is that you lose your own people and you overstretch them. So it's important that you find ways of influencing some other people, going out there and making sure that slowly, because that ability to influence is not an overnight shift, it's a journey. And that is what is important.
No, so thank you so much. I hope the person that posted this comment, you answered. Really, it's about, as leaders, we need to learn the ability to influence with authenticity, which will build trust in the long run. So there's another question from Tamsanga, Dr. Pat in the chat, saying that how do we ascertain ethical leadership, as some of the challenges in leadership are as a result of lack of morals, ethics, and integrity?
Thank you so much, Tammy, for a good question. First and foremost, when you are in an organization, maybe you need to start drawing a line in the sand. Part of drawing that line in the sand is to get everybody else to say, look, we adopt a zero tolerance attitude or stance. Okay? I know that's difficult, but then the second thing, Tammy, as I attempt to answer your question, is that when it comes to leadership and ethics, it's not necessarily what you say, it's about what you exhibit, what you do. Because as a leader, people really don't care what you say to them. You could shout as much as you can, they watch you. If you exhibit ethical behavior, people are most likely to follow you because people love a clear example. But if you exhibit, when you say something and do something contrary to that, you've basically modeled people. So it's about modeling the right behavior. But also, Tammy, what also becomes important in an organization is that we should be consistent. When Tammy has not done or has done something that's untoward, we should be able to deal with Tammy almost right there and make sure that people can see. But when we treat Tammy different from Tutu or from Peter, then we've basically failed. Maybe Tammy, it's high time that I bring something that people fail at, a lot of managers or leaders fail on. You know, it's what I call a star performer syndrome. Sometimes you find that in an organization, you've got this great employee, you know, and this guy really walks on water. But 7 out of 10 times, those are the employees that are corrupt. Because they know that, or what they think in their mind is that if I'm found, they may better to deal with me because I am critical to their operation. And that's when it requires a leader with a backbone to say, I don't care. You have not been able to exhibit the right behaviors. I'm going to pounce on you. I'm going to press that button.
No, thank you so much, Dr. Pat. Tammy, I hope you are answered there. And there's a comment from Mary. Thank you so much, Dr. Pat. Really an honor listening to your wisdom on leadership today. Your reminder that leaders must be lifelong learners, create psychological safety, and not focus only on execution, but also on building environments where people thrive really resonated with me. I'm grateful to learn from you and inspired to carry these lessons forward. So, Dr. Pat, let me just check also, other than the comments, is there anyone who would like to say something or ask a question? Please raise your hand, unmute, and ask the question. So there's no hand. Okay. So there's no hand. So Dr. Pat, let's now move towards the close and really try to wrap up. You know, Dr. Pat, if you could really leave one key message for leaders listening right now, or for anyone that will also listen to this recording, like I said, is that we'll be promoting it on our YouTube channel, what would that message be in the context of the leadership game and everything that we have unpacked today?
Thank you so much again, Pam. 2 things in mind. One, I would say in the context of a leadership game, one, you need to pay it forward. By paying it forward is that as a leader, I expect you to invest in creating other equally competent leaders or even more competent than yourself. Then you would have been able to successfully pay it forward. Then the second thing, you know, we talk a lot as people and we love talking. And I say, take the first step. Go out there and make a difference. Remember, the journey of 1,000 words or of 1,000 steps begin with one, with the first step. I think.
Take the step, and then the journey of 1,000 steps begins, you know, because sometimes we are afraid to take the first step, right? Because we want to see the entire stairway. We want to have the full picture, how things will look like a year from now. And then we create all sorts of scenarios in our heads and we do analysis paralysis. And we end up not doing anything because we are filling our minds with a lot of what ifs. What if it doesn't work? What if, you know, people laugh at me? What if people reject me? What if? So thank you so much to just really reinforcing that the journey of 1,000 steps begin with that one single step. So take the step and surround yourself with people that have done the things that you want to do, and so that they can point you into the right direction as well. So also it really also confirms that the leadership game is not a one-man or one-woman show, that if you are starting something like Inspired Growth that we have started, is that I could never go at it alone. So we look around you and say, who are the people that will help me or help us carry this vision forward and make sure that we are connected to the right communities as well in terms of making a greater impact in the long run, and what will shape this vision for the next generation, for the next 10 years, for the next 20 years. So thank you so much, Dr. Pat, for joining us. There's also a comment here in the chat that says, kindly share your YouTube channel. I'm very inspired. So the YouTube channel, Mary, I'm not sure if you can post the find it on YouTube and post the link, but it is called the Diversity Roundtable.
Okay.
So as we are then wrapping up, hopefully, Mary, you can find it and post it before we close the call, right? So Dr. Pat, thank you for joining us, and thank you for giving us such a rich conversation on what really it means to play the leadership game. But I wouldn't have done it justice if we do not afford you a chance to talk about your books. And you said you've written 5 books. Can you talk to us about your books, what the names are, where do we find them, and really maybe just the next 10 minutes, because we do have about 15 minutes. Tell us the journey that led you to writing these books, because I think that would be information that would be missed if we do not give you the opportunity to do so. Over to you, Dr. Pat.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pam. I really appreciate that. Now, maybe tell you how I wrote my first book. I was driving from the northern part of KZN coming back to Durban, and I got stopped by a former boarding school colleague. He asked me if I could give his uncle a lift back to Durban. So I agreed. And we were driving there, and then this old man had a lot of wisdom, and I'm going to cut it short. As we're driving on the N2 approaching Umhlali River, he turned around, he looked at me and said, "Young man, I think you are very wise." And he started banging on my car's dashboard. He said, "I want to tell you 2 things. And if you could take these things, you'll be a better person in future." And I'm going to tell it here because we don't talk about those core issues. We hide them and they affect us. He said, "My son, men have got 2 heads. That's why the other one is bigger than the other." He said, "Whatever it takes, when this other head comes on, don't switch this one." He said, "A number of men that have switched the other head, when this other one comes on, they've embarrassed themselves. They've ended up with an egg on the face." He says, "I don't want you to do that." Then he then said, "Oh, my son, your sisters have got 2 mouths. It's this one, there's a nose and everything else." He said, "The other one takes anything. That's why they end up pregnant with children that have got no fathers and AIDS and so on." He went to town, you know. So I took this to heart. First one day I'm on the British Airways airline flying to Durban from Johannesburg on a business class. I'm sitting next to one of the highly successful senior executive ladies in KZN, and I was just talking. And I kept on looking at the back. And she said to me, "Pet, so I said to her, "Look, there's an old man there that looks like Nqobile Pamela Xaba, but I know he's late. And at the time that he died, he did not have any siblings." And she said to me, "Then what's about it?" So I told her the story about what Nqobile Pamela Xaba said. But when I got to that point about our ladies and so on, she broke down and cried. It felt like I told her that her wealth had come to an end. We're taxing, took off, landed in Durban. As we were taxing to the terminal point, she said to me, "Pat, I would want you to write a book about this." I said, "Why?" She said, "I'm one of those bastard children who does not have any paternal identity." She said, "It happened exactly like Nqobile Pamela Xaba had told it to you. My mother passed matric with flying colors some years ago, went down to Fort Hare, you know, those parties that take place at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
She enjoyed herself. 3 months later, she's pregnant. She doesn't know who the father is." She said, "I do not have a paternal identity." She said, "I would want you to write a book about what Nqobile Pamela Xaba told you." Then I wrote a book called Conversations with the Best. In that book, basically, I narrate the stories, short stories, but I turn them into an impactful leadership stories that people can learn and change their attitudes or mend their ways. So I wrote Conversations with the Best Series 1, and then I also wrote Series 2. And then after that, there was a need for me to convert it in Zulu, and I converted in Zulu. It's called Izingxoxo Nezinqibile. After that, I then wrote a book called Such is Life. Such is Life is a book that talks about things that happen in real life. And now these are the things that people trip on but they don't want to talk about them. They rather keep those things to themselves. So I thought, well, let me just put it there and make sure that when people read this book, Such is Life, it will lead them to basically adjust, readjust, and adjust. But it also lead them to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And the biggest thing about our communities is that we are continuously learning. And from a leadership point of view, Pam and the colleagues, I always say that you as a person, you carry a toolbox, okay? But in a toolbox, there are tools that are irrelevant now. You need to basically empty your toolbox of those irrelevant tools and bring in new ones. How do you do that? You do that in the form of learning, unlearning, and relearning. So that is what the book is all about. Then the other book that basically was released this year, it's called Retrench, Now What? Basically, I wrote that book. I went through a retrenchment period myself. And I was in Johannesburg or in Pretoria or Gauteng for 11 days. And I bumped into people that have been retrenched. And almost a number of them would say, Dr. Pat, you don't look like a retrenched person. You know? And some of those people, so on a Friday, sitting in my house in Pretoria, I was just praying. And I had this voice that says, Pat, you're going to be part of the solution. And let me tell you, I had a wrestling with that voice. How do I become part of that solution? And that voice said to me, you need to write a retrenchment survival guide that will help my people how to handle and navigate retrenchment. In a nutshell, one of the things that I had to write about is the fact that retrenchment is not a curse. In a number of times, retrenchment is a blessing, but you don't know at the time because you're frustrated, you've just been laid off, and so on. But also the fact that when you go through retrenchment, God is as close to you as he has always been, just that you don't feel it at that time, but God is still with you. And it also talks about how to be prudent, because all of a sudden you've got more money than you've ever had, but that money is not going to last more than 9 to 10 months. You need to be prudent. But it talks to you about how to navigate the retrenchment journey. And a number of people, and I also spoke to some other people, by the way, that I needed to get some testimony from them. Somebody said, well, when I got retrenched, it took about 15 months later, I was divorced, or I lost my family, or this and that, because it affects not only you, it affects your children to some other people. Remember, when you get retrenched, they've got to move from the top suburban schools to acres, maybe even to a Makai. And it confuses your children and your family and so on. But what you also don't realize is that what you need to do, and in that book, I talk about that when you get retrenched, try and fly under the radar for a couple of months. Flying under the radar, it affords you an opportunity to find yourself.
Yeah.
It affords an opportunity to find a new rhythm about yourself. Because believe me, you'll find a new rhythm by yourself. You're going to trip onto something that's going to, bump onto something that's going to change your life and excite you. You find yourself making a business, you find yourself doing things that you never thought you'd do. But I'm also talking about, there's a chapter that is called a personal continuity plan. I am basically saying them, you work for this organization, you are a top achiever, you get your bonus and your whatever every year. You poured your heart and soul for this organization. But what guarantee have you got that one day they will say to you, the silver cup is broken, we no longer need you? So when that happens, you need to basically trigger your personal continuity plan such that you don't find yourself going down and unable to come back. And I talk about it in a number of ways. But the fact that, it's not a curse, it's a blessing. So it's got about 25 chapters. And I think a lot of people have been able to find some help, and a lot of people have come back and said, wow, what a great book it is. I thank you.
Sure, I know what, I'm just so intrigued by your wisdom, Dr. Pat. And so how do we get hold of these books? Is there like can you just talk us through people in our audience and whoever that will be listening to this webinar, this recording, how can they get hold of your books?
Well, firstly, you have them at Take a Lot. You can go to Take a Lot, and you'll be able to pick them up, and probably by the author, Dr. Pat Mazibuko, you find them. And also, you can basically send me a WhatsApp on 6333191. We post these books to you as well. I don't have them in the stores right now, and although I wanted to do that, but some wiser people than myself say it's a mission and a half, and sometimes it's more expensive to keep a book than just to make sure that people can buy directly or via Check-a-Lot. And I think people have really been able to do that successfully. We're going to continue doing that. So, and you can write to me and you can give them my email address, and we are able to respond swiftly.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pat. Thank you. It was just really, really amazing to have you here today. We are deeply honored that you could actually just take time out of your busy work schedule and just to be with us and talk to us about the leadership game. We've got a comment from Tammy in the chat that says, well done, Dr. Pat and Pam. This was a really great webinar with lots of thought-provoking anecdotes. Keep it up. I will follow the channel. So thank you so much. So let's close then, Dr. Pat, in the 5 minutes that we have left. So to our listeners and people that have joined the call today, remember, leadership is not a title. It is a practice. It is not a destination. It's a journey. And like any other game, it demands strategy. It demands adaptability. It demands, above all, accountability, right? So, Dr. Pat, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything that you would like to say before we say goodbye?
Pam, I want to thank you and your colleagues and everybody that is online. But my parting shot is as follows, within the leadership game, don't be scared to fail, And a lot of people that are gurus today, they failed a number of times, but they did not relent. So I just want to sign off by saying, never be afraid to fail. You're going to be better every day. You wake up, you basically pull yourself and move in the right direction. On that note, I wish you well and God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Pat. The leadership game with Dr. Pat Mazibuko. This has been the Diversity Roundtable. Pamela Xaba, reminding you that leadership done right doesn't just change organizations, it transforms lives as well. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, and goodbye until we talk again next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.